There has to be some common sense.
Yes, sir. They have the car stopped in 10th and Ranch by Kohberger.
We still don't know who pulled the trigger.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, retired NYPD Sergeant Bill Cannon, a 27-year veteran of the NYPD. Folks, the Kohberger case, the Idaho 4 case, whatever you want to call it, is back in the news. Prosecutors in the Idaho murders case have demanded customer information about suspect Brian Kohberger's online searches for knives. Of course, we know 4 students were found stabbed on November 13th on 1122 King Road in Moscow, Idaho. Kohberger, who is 28 years old, is charged with 4 counts of murder and other charges in connection with the deaths of Ethan Chapin, Madison Mogan, Zaina Knodel, and Kaylee Gonzalez. And of course, he is denied any involvement. Investigators have issued warrants for Amazon, Apple, PayPal, Venmo, and YouTube. That was reported by Court TV. Newly unsealed search court papers show that search warrants were obtained earlier this year asking for the history of an Amazon account from March 20th to March 30th, 2022, and one from November 6th to December 2022. The warrant was part of filings released by an Idaho court on September 28th and asked for all detailed customer click activity pertaining to knives and accessories. A warrant was also issued for Apple to provide a history of messages sent and received by an Apple ID account. Data from both warrants has been placed into evidence by the Moscow Police Department. An autopsy for the victims showed that they were likely killed with a large knife and they died from multiple stab wounds. The murder weapon in the case has never been found, but investigators say they linked the suspect to the killings via DNA found on a knife sheath left at the scene. Now, again, Mr. Kohberger was arrested at his family's home in Pennsylvania on December 30th of 2022, and he was returned to Idaho, where a grand jury indicted him for the killings in May. Judge John Judge actually has entered a not guilty plea on Mr. Kohberger's behalf, and he remains held in the Latah County Jail without bail. Prosecutors say that he is also linked to the crime scene by cell phone data, security cameras, and witnesses. His lawyers say that Mr. Kohberger, who was studying for a doctorate in criminal justice at nearby Washington State University, had taken a solo drive in his car hours before the bodies were discovered. The trial had been set for October, but its date was vacated when the suspect waived his right to a speedy trial. So, folks, interesting, not that this is, again, any new, smoking gun information. However, this type of information ties him potentially, if there's search information for a K-bar style Marine Corps knife, such that the sheath was found on the scene with his DNA on it. Again, was touch DNA. For every single offense, there's a defense, and his defense, of course, is making light of the fact that his touch DNA was found on the knife sheath. But wouldn't it make sense that if the knife sheath was a K-bar Marine Corps style knife sheath, that the knife would have been the same? So what better way to connect Brian Kohberger to that than to see his searches on Amazon? Was he searching for a K-bar knife? Did he, in fact, purchase a K-bar knife, much like the one where the sheath was seen? So that's information. That's, evidence. It's powerful evidence, even though, again, We use that word, circumstantial. That from which inferences are drawn. And yes, it's just one piece of evidence of probably hundreds and thousands of other pieces of evidence. And can the defense argue that, what does that mean that he was searching on Amazon for a K-bar knife and it just so happened that a K-bar sheath? Or what if he actually purchased that K-bar knife from Amazon? I think that's pretty damn powerful evidence.
DNA left on a knife sheath. That's what investigators used to connect WSU grad student Brian Kohberger to a crime scene where 4 University of Idaho students were found stabbed to death in November of 2022.
You understand these rights?
Yes.
Kohberger stood silent at his arraignment,
I'm going to enter not guilty plea.
where a plea of not guilty was entered on his behalf. Newly unsealed court documents show investigators are following digital footprints, serving a warrant to Amazon. They're looking for detailed customer click activity pertaining to knives and accessories.
These warrants reveal something about what the state is attempting to do and what they're concerned about. They know it is a problem that they can't connect Kohberger to anything more than a knife sheath.
Over the summer,
You know, folks, that's the mentality of a defense attorney. How did a knife sheath with his DNA wind up in the bed next to Madison Mogen and Kaylee Gonzalez? How did that happen? Defense attorneys are funny. Oh, they know a knife sheath was found and 4 people were killed with a knife. The wounds were similar to wounds that would be caused by that type of knife. So this defense attorney is making light of evidence that the prosecution wishes to present, which to me, again, I've been accused of being pro-prosecution, is powerful, powerful evidence.
records show similar warrants were served to TikTok, Reddit, Snapchat, and Strava, a run tracking app. Kohberger's usage of the various social media networks could show his activity on the night of the murders and help the prosecution in crafting a motive for the killings.
I understand you want to be fully prepared.
At the end of August, Kohberger, who's now facing the death penalty, waived his right to a speedy trial. What followed is a volley of motions between the prosecution and the defense. The court still undecided on if cameras will be allowed inside the courtroom for a trial that date has yet to be set.
But the tension with that is the belief that having cameras in the courtroom creates a situation of bias and potential prejudice against the defendant from having a fair trial.
Meanwhile, the families of the 4 students that were killed, Madison Mogen, Kaylee Gonzalez, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin, all wait for their day in court. Court was scheduled for October 2nd. That's next week, but it's been postponed. Kohberger has since waived his right to a speedy trial. No new court date has been set as the discovery process, some may say, drags on. In the newsroom,
So can you imagine when he says the discovery process drags on? Think of how much discovery there is in this case. Voluminous amounts of evidence. You know, the digital evidence alone is just mind-boggling. And then, of course, you have video evidence, and then you have testimonial evidence. You know, witnesses inside the house, the car, potentially evidence found inside the car. Again, other circumstantial evidence, the fact that he drove to Pennsylvania with his father, taking a circuitous route, not the most direct route. What was that all about? And again, I quote my esteemed colleague, Michael Geary. Was that, in fact, consciousness of guilt? The reason he took that circuitous route to go home. So yes, all of those things is evidence. You know, a week or two ago, we had the of course 48 hours doing a broadcast, and they had the parents of Kaylee Gonzalez on. And much of, you know, a lot of times the news, specifically 48 Hours, these big magazine shows, they report news that's old news as if it's brand new. And I don't think there was anything brand new revealed by 48 hours, yet, millions of people, of course, watched it. It's a, network television show. And I'm going to show a little bit of Kaylee Gonzalez's parents in that interview on 48 Hours.
The way the bed was set up is what
She was trapped.
She was trapped.
Trapped. That's how the mother of Idaho murder victim Kaylee Gonzalez describes how her daughter died in a new interview about the case, as prosecutors and defense attorneys asked to close an upcoming hearing to the public.
So this notion that the state and the defense can get together to keep cameras out is ill-founded. Let's just put it that way.
Thanks for joining us here on Law and Crime. I'm Anjanette Levy. Kaylee Gonzalez's parents have revealed new details they say they learned from the coroner about how their daughter died. Kaylee Gonzalez, her best friend, Maddie Mogan, their roommate, Xana Kernodle, and Kernodle's...
Folks, if you recall, if you followed this case from the beginning, the coroner, maybe a week after the murders, maybe even a couple of days, consulted with the Gonzalez family and told them exactly the cause of death, the manner of death, the potential type of knife that was used. So again, Anjanette Levy is reporting this as new. It's not new. It's old news being reported as if it is new. And I really like Anjanette Levy, but this is not new stuff.
Boyfriend, Ethan Chapin, were all stabbed to death in a house near the University of Idaho campus last November. The case has captured the attention of people around the world. Brian Kohberger, a Washington State University PhD student, has pleaded not guilty to the murders. In an episode of 48 Hours, Kaylee Gonzalez's parents said the county coroner told them that Maddie Mogan was killed first. Kaylee was killed second. She was sleeping in the bed with her best friend.
Yeah, there's evidence to show that she awakened and tried to get out of that situation.
The new information comes as Brian Kohberger is due back in court this week. His lawyers are asking Judge John Judge to dismiss the indictment. They claim the grand jurors were biased and that mistakes were made in the process. But mystery still surrounds some of the specific claims because the motion is sealed. Now the defense and the prosecution have filed paperwork agreeing to close the hearing to the public. But there's one problem with that, according to First Amendment lawyer Jack Greiner.
Well, I think that the idea that the defense and the state can get together and close a hearing just by their own agreement is just simply not the case. There are other stakeholders, there are other people with interest, including the families who is, from my reading, there's a desire that the cameras be in the courtroom by at least.
Folks, amazing the power of the press. And I think this is mostly the power of the press that is almost demanding that cameras be allowed in the courtroom. Ultimately, it's the decision of Judge John Judge, who's presiding over this case. However, if he rules in the negative that says no cameras in the courtroom, the press and perhaps the family will appeal that decision, and it could go to a higher court to possibly override his decision. So this is a huge issue. And I think that I've spoken before on cameras in the courtroom. I think that it changes the behavior of just about everyone involved in the case, the judge's behavior, the prosecutor, the defense, the defendant, the witnesses. They're all acutely aware that they're on camera and millions of people potentially are watching them. So it does affect, again, the behavior of everyone involved in the case.
At least some families of the victims. The other stakeholder, obviously, is the public, and the public is represented by the media.
Greiner has argued on behalf of media outlets in courts for years. In fact, he was part of a coalition that included Law and Crime during a high-profile trial in Ohio last year. To close a courtroom, the Reporters Committee for Freedom of the Press says the judge must hold a hearing on the need for secrecy and allow the media and others to argue against closure. It's a rule from the U.S. Supreme Court. Closing courtrooms is rare in criminal cases.
it is a huge outlier. The idea of closing the courtroom entirely, that the public can't come in for any purpose, is separate and apart from having cameras in the courtroom. That there has to be a compelling need for the closure, and that there are no less restrictive means. So it's up to the state and the defense, I guess, since they both want the hearing closed, to come up to articulate a compelling need for the closure. There's nothing in the stipulated motion that articulates a compelling need to close this proceeding, and there's certainly no suggestion of any less restrictive means. So the motion on its face is really defective, and if the court were to close this proceeding entirely without a hearing, that would be automatically subject to appellate review, that the media coalition, I'm sure, would go to the appellate level in Idaho and seek what would be a writ of mandamus to ensure that the court be open during these proceedings.
The issue of having cameras in the courtroom for the trial is a separate issue. Media outlets, including Law and Crime, have argued to keep cameras in the courtroom during the trial. Reiner has argued on behalf of many media outlets many times to keep cameras in the courtroom.
Public ought to know about what's happening at a mass murder, a trial of an alleged mass murderer, and the more the public knows, the better for everybody involved.
Judge?
So, folks, the question to that is, does the rights of the defendant, is that overruled by the rights of the freedom of the press, and perhaps the freedom of the family to have transparency and to be able to show this case out in the public? Folks, I always like to remember, and for everyone to remember, that who this case is about, you know. And of course, you see those four beautiful students on the screen: Ethan Chapin, Kaylee Gonsalves, Zana Kernodle, and Madison Mogen. And we never, ever want to forget or lose sight of the fact that that is what this case and who this case is all about. And just, you know, to synopsize, today we were talking about that the prosecution is asking or has warrants for Amazon.
Brand new for you this morning. Newly released court documents are revealing that police in the Moscow murders case are asking for more information from several big tech companies.
The new search warrants were obtained over the summer and are asking for the suspect in this case, Brian Kohberger's customer information on Amazon, Apple, and PayPal. Prosecutors previously asked Amazon for information related to knife-related searches in December of last year. We at Crim first told you about this warrant back in March. In the new warrants, prosecutors asked Amazon for a wider search history that includes items that he might have looked at but did not purchase. Documents show police are asking for that customer information both during the month of the murders, but also in the months before Kohberger even moved to Washington State. Kohberger was originally scheduled to go to trial next Tuesday, but that has been pushed back indefinitely. You can find more on this story on our website right now at crim.com.
So, folks, that's our show for today. I hope it was pretty informative. A lot of information that needs to get out there. It's so voluminous that we're going to try to stay on top of it and give you and bring to you the new information as it comes around. Folks, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Bill Cannon from Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. Have a great day.
One episode just ain't enough.